There's something called a pain chain. And a pain chain is a series of challenges that are related to each other that when you string them together, create a narrative. So let's say that I'm in college and I have to write a 2-page paper on targeting companies. I might start out with paragraph 1 about this, then that transitions to paragraph 2. Well, all we're gonna do is we're gonna take that paper and bust it up into small little emails, and we're gonna tell the story over 8 to 10 touches, and we're gonna provide value. I don't consider this spamming. You find 5 or 6 different areas of pain. Like, for example, when your team doesn't have time to do research, you target poorly. When you target poorly, your messaging doesn't have the right kind of solution problem synergy. When that doesn't align, then you don't get the right type of engagement that you want. Then therefore you turn up the volume, and then you end up blacklisted, and email is no longer a viable channel for you.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this leadership episode of 30 Minutes to President's Club. My name is Armand Farouk, and I'm here with my co-host, Mark Kosoglow. And today, we have a guest that you've never heard of before. He's got a little bit of a quirky personality. He's got some crazy ideas with Outbound. You know, we weren't sure. Should we publish this one? This guy's got some crazy stuff. But today, we decided to let this guest on. His name is Mark Kosoglow. If you're not familiar with him, he led outreach from 0 to 100 million plus of ARR. He was the CRO over at Catalyst, and he is currently the CEO at Operator AI. And folks, Outbound is literally harder than it has ever been. I have teams that are doing twice the volume with half the results today, and it's not a skill thing. It is really hard to get people on the calendar and generate net new pipeline today. And Mark has some different ways to do it. So Mark, why should people listen?
I have, for the last 14 months, had over 1,200 conversations with revenue leaders about what's going on in Outbound, what the best people are doing to fix it, what the worst people are doing to ruin it for the rest of us, and where we should find a good solution. And so a lot of what I talk about in this episode is a distillation of hours and hours and hours of conversations with folks in this area.
As you know, we start every show with your top 3 actionable takeaways, so let's get your 3.
My 3 actionable takeaways are: 1, maybe we should rethink what the definition of ICP is. Most of us define ICP, if we really get serious, as firmographic and technographic lookalikes to our current high-performing customers. And our hope is that those people will have the same type of problems that we've already solved for our customers. In actuality, that is probably an exercise in business racial profiling, where we're looking at somebody and being like, just because you look like this, you probably have the same problems as everybody else. That's an offensive way to do things, so shouldn't do that. I think what we should move to is an ICP definition that says, how many problems does this company have that we can solve? And what is the value of us solving those problems for them? Think about it for a second. If I could give you a list of 100 companies that had 5 to 12 problems that you solve with your product and told you the exact amount of revenue or risk or time that it would solve or get them, you'd be rolling. That's what people want. So maybe we should consider changing our definition of ICP.
Boom. What's number 2?
I just learned this from my buddies over at AK Operations. They've really said we're not doing spray and pray anymore. They have come up with a term that I love called respect the buyer's journey. And basically what that means is when someone is making their way through a known process of human behavior that's been scientifically studied, I'm unaware of a problem, so therefore I don't care if anybody emails me. I don't want anything because I don't even have a problem. I'm aware of a problem. Then after I'm aware of it, I need to consider, do I need to do something about it? Then finally, I'm going to do an evaluation to decide, am I going to actually do something to solve this problem or not? That's the scientific process people go through behaviorally. And so if our messaging isn't at the same level as our buyer, our conversion rate takes a hit. If I take somebody in aware, which is early in their buyer's journey, and I start asking them for a meeting, they're aware of the problem, but it's not a priority. So they're probably not going to give me the prioritized time to look at it. But if I take somebody in evaluation and I send them a aware message, I look like I'm a dunce because they are so experts that I'm sending them high-level stuff and they immediately disqualify me as not an expert. We have to make sure that we respect the buyer's journey by making our messaging meet where someone is in the buyer's journey, or at least be able to assess where they're at from that messaging so that we can then align our messaging to where they're at in their process.
Mark, I'm unaware of your third takeaway, and I would like you to make me aware so that I can then decide that I want to do something about it.
Well, my third takeaway is an example of unaware messaging. So as an example, at Catalyst, I went in and I'm a big phone guy. I have a saying, the phone is the ATM machine, press buttons and money comes out. And I really like people on the phone. That's how I cut my sales teeth. We started amping up our call volume a ton. We bought a tool that helped us make dozens and dozens of calls a day. I think my rep said to make $100 a day, right? So once we got that in place, I was letting it run. And I was unaware of the fact that I had a huge phone number accuracy connect rate issue. So if somebody had said, Mark, hey, I don't know if you're calling or not more, but we need to meet because if you are, your connection rate is probably bad. I'd have been like, I don't even know what my connection rate is. I just got started calling. I don't think it's an issue of data quality. I think it's an issue of effort. I'm dealing with the effort issue. Well, sure enough, after a month or two, I go look at the connection rates and they are horrible, like under 2%. So immediately now I'm aware of the problem. I actually switched from unaware to aware to consideration to evaluation like within 2 days. And now if somebody had sent that same messaging to me, hey, let's meet, whatever, I would have immediately responded. But how could they have gotten me when I was unaware? That messaging might look something like this. Hey, calling's making a comeback. Not sure if you're aware or not, but the biggest reason calling fails is because of connect rate, not because of how many dials you make. If you make $100 and you only connect with one person, you're never going to be successful. You need at least a 7% connect rate in order to make calling viable. You want to do a quick call to see where you're at and what we can do to get you over 7%. That would have at least caused me to say, they moved me from unaware to I'm aware of a problem now. And maybe I'll go click on a research or I could do some research or something like that. That then would move me into consideration. And now I'm ready to ask for a meeting. And so we're sculpting that journey that respects the buyer's journey.
Could you give me an example of any company you've worked with or a company that you've worked for? What would the old example of ICP look like in the wrong way? And then what would be an example of this new ICP definition you have where you're really saying it's number of problems and size of problems or value of problems?
You know, we have a customer, an operator that's in the legal tech industry. So they help law firms look at documents and all that kind of stuff. That space is really exploding. When they came to us, they said, all right, here is my ICP. And it was law firms that are between 10 and 500 lawyers that are in the US or Canada, that are English speaking, that have some kind of incumbent old legacy tool, that have an IT department that has at least 10 people in it. And it was just these series of things that if you buy the right data source, you can just check off, right? Well, we started a campaign with them, and how do you think we did the very first month? Not very well. And the reason we didn't do well wasn't because the messaging was bad. It's because the accounts that they gave us had none of the problems that they solved, or at least we couldn't prove they had those problems in a way. So we are now sending messaging about a problem that we don't even know that they have, that we're hoping they respond to it. Now we're just like every other 1% reply rate campaign, which is the norm. Versus when we sat down with them to analyze what was going on, we realized they were using this very immature ICP stuff. So we started to say, all right, you have account scoring tools, you have some intent tools, you have some signals tools. Let's start to build a little model that tells us, well, if they've been on your site 4 times and they downloaded this and they've responded to a couple of emails but not booked a meeting, they're probably in consideration. You're just not using the right messaging to get them into an evaluation with you. And so we started to classify them where they were at in the buyer's journey, and also looking at what kind of problems do they have? What is our problem solution fit? And so operator will go out and research and find, here's provable business problems that these law firms have that match exactly the value props of this legal tech company. And so now we have, all right, what are we going to talk to them about? What makes them in our ICP? And then where are they at in that buyer's journey? And now we can match those two together. And if somebody's in aware, we send them aware-based messaging, trying to move them into consideration, not trying to book a meeting. Once we see signs of them moving into consideration, which might be downloading a case study, or there's some action that they're taking that says, hey, I'm looking at this. Then we start to hit them with more sales messaging to book a meeting.
So let's start at the top of the funnel. Maybe someone is unaware. We used to call that latent pain. In other words, they don't know that they have a problem. If you could show them that they had a problem, they'd be like, oh, maybe I should consider that. Similar to your cold calling example. What would be an example of something that you would look for in a law firm that would tell you that there is a problem you need to educate them on?
The revenue per lawyer. So for one company that we have that does marketing software for legal firms, they help come in and modernize your website, create AI generated content so that you can create an inbound flow and all of that kind of stuff, right? So for us, we send our agents out to understand what is their revenue per lawyer, right? If the revenue per lawyer was lower than their peers or the benchmark, we know that they might have like a problem with the amount of pipeline or the amount of cases they're getting, right? Then we sent our agent out and said, how old is their website? And our agent was able to look at like the design, some of when the things were installed, all that kind of stuff that started to tell us, for example, one client that we found in Jacksonville, Florida, their website hadn't been touched in 7 years. There's no way that they were attracting people. Then the next thing would be, like, do they have free content on their site? Like, do they have a blog? Do they have some newsletter? Do they have something like that like creates that inbound motion? This Jacksonville law firm did not, right? So now what we have is for an ICP, we have like, okay, do they have an old site? Do they actually have a marketing person? What does their website traffic look like in terms of their peers? How modern is their site? And then we contain all those together. And now when we see enough of those markers, we understand that, hey, there's enough clues here where there's smoke, there's fire.
The number one source of performance issues that I see in outbound teams is not how much activity they're doing. And it's not the quality of the cold call script. It's not the quality of the cold emails. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes those need to be fixed. It is almost always a targeting issue. If you want to sell as many hot dogs as humanly possible, Alex Hormozy has a great quote. What is the number one ingredient you can have? It's a starving crowd.
Yeah. Yep.
You could have the worst hot dogs in the world. If it's 2 a.m. and you're on Hollywood Boulevard in LA, you're going to sell a lot of disgusting Oscar Mayer hot dogs. If it's summertime in Florida and everyone's staying in good shape, you could have the best hot dog in the world, but no one's buying your hot dog in South Beach because they're all doing juice cleanses. And so the way that you can reverse engineer this is whenever I'm working on outbound with any team, the question that I ask is, look at the customers where the problem was burning the hottest. Write down the 5 reasons that the problem was burning the hottest. And then let's figure out how to filter for those things. At Carta, when we were selling cap table software, equity management software, the biggest triggers for us were, one, if they had raised a funding round 12 months ago or 11 months ago, their valuation was about to expire. Or 2, right as they were going to Series C or hiring a controller, they usually started to hire a controller because they had to do expense accounting and they were probably going to be audited pretty soon. Yeah. And so if we saw those 2 things, we knew they would need help with their cap table compliance if they were on spreadsheets before. So reverse engineer the problems and then figure out where those problems are hottest and biggest. And that is your ICP sweet spot.
What's going on, folks? There are literally only 2 things that you need to nail as a salesperson if you want to make it to President's Club. The first is your ability to fill your calendar up with meetings and create new pipeline, aka prospecting. The other thing you have to nail is your ability to drive those deals to close. And since you've made it this far in the video, I've got a gift to help you do both of those things. If you use the code YouTube at 30mpc.com/courses, you'll actually get $50 off our 2 best courses to help you nail both the creation of pipeline and the closing of pipeline. The first course is called Cold Calls to President's Club. And in that course, we teach you what to do, what to say, and how to sound in every single part of a cold call, from your call opener to how you pitch, to how you overcome objections, to voicemails and gatekeepers and more. The second course is our discovery course, which is focused on how to sell in a way that doesn't feel like selling. And in that course, we teach you how to uncover massive 6 and 7 figure business problems that companies actually want to pay to solve. And we'll teach you the way to structure your calls. We'll teach you the questions to ask. We'll teach you how to get to the decision maker and drive timeline and make discovery something that you know how to do effortlessly. And again, if you go to 30mpc.com/courses or go to the link below and use that code YouTube, you'll get $50 off any of the courses. I will see you at President's Club.
That's exactly right. Make an assumption of where people are, write your messaging there, then create like a series of touch points that have soft CTAs that provide value, that provide help, that give you content, give you resources, point people in directions. That would be a signal that if they clicked on it, they might be considering something. If they click and go, we measure all that kind of stuff. Now we know we can start asking for meetings and put them in those more sales-oriented sequence. If they're not, then we put them in a more marketing, nurture, education type of sequence that's meant to help them get to that awareness phase.
I run our newsletter at 30 Minutes to President's Club, which very much functions like a blog. And I get 1,000,001 people reaching out to me saying, we do these SEO services. Do you want to look at our SEO services? The problem is I've never even considered buying SEO optimization services because I just get a bunch of spam emails about it. I'm like, why do I need it? It seems like voodoo meatloaf magic. Someone sends me an email. This is the one that broke through my head. It's like, hey, Armand, I noticed you've written over literally like 52 blog posts last year. You've got some awesome content. And you've also got pretty healthy web traffic from what I can see online. Not sure if you realize, but I looked at a couple of your blogs and all of them are missing a lot of the most commonly searched for keywords that a salesperson will be looking for. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but there are blogs like this, and this that are far less well written, but will get X% more traffic just because they're putting the right words in the blog.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not sure if you've considered even just like dropping those words into your blogs. And that was essentially the end of the email. And I was like, now I'm actually considering.
That was great. But what they should have said is, would you like me to send you over the 20 keywords that are most influential at driving stuff that you can use in your blog post to immediately boost traffic, at least X% or maybe as much as Y% or whatever? You have to actually, Armand, make a decision. All right, this is new. I think SEO is kind of junk. What they've said is interesting enough to me. If my behavior forces me to go access this or say, yeah, send it over, that means I've moved down in my buyer's journey. If you're still like, I don't know, and there's not enough momentum to act, then that means that you're still in unaware. And so now we need to keep them in that type of messaging. Maybe the next thing would be like, hey, not sure if you know this, Armand, but like, your average blog post is like 8,000 characters. The best blog posts are under 2,500 characters. Here's 3 examples of those if you want to go see them. And you want me to send you a quick report on how much better that is? See, sometimes we want to give in the email, and that's fine to give 1 or 2 things, but there's like a whole piece of stuff behind that you can then create. We have a call recording software. We spend every transcript of every sales call through an agent. That agent then tells us what are the themes of that. And then we can create, it's so simple now with ChatGPT to create really valuable content pieces around very specific things for very specific people. This is the thing that we've unlocked, is we've unlocked the ability to really do micro campaigns with people that in the past, I couldn't. My content marketer, my designer, my demand gen person can only make me 1 or 2 things a month. I can make 1 or 2 things a day right now with ChatGPT. And so like, that's where we have to take a step forward as sellers and stop waiting around for the things we need when it's so easy to create them. And once we have this in place, we can start to see what people is it worth the time investing in to get them to move down the buyer's journey.
So Mark, could you give an example? If I wanted to create some content that would essentially warm someone up, right? It would make them aware of the problem or possibly get them to consider solving the problem. What's an example of a problem I would want to make someone aware of and a piece of content that I could create with ChatGPT?
There's something called a pain chain. And a pain chain is a series of challenges that are related to each other that when you string them together, create a narrative. So let's say that I'm in college and I have to write a 2-page paper on targeting companies. I might start out with paragraph 1 about this, then that transitions to paragraph 2. Well, all we're going to do is we're going to take that paper and bust it up into small little emails, and we're going to tell the story over 8 to 10 touches. and we're going to provide value. I don't consider this spamming, because if you're asking for a meeting, if you're doing a hard pitch, you're spamming. If you're sending people valuable information that should help them, that's not spam to me. That is just, hey, I'm giving, you can take it or leave it. You know what I mean? Like somebody the other day left something at my front door. Like I think it was some Cubs Girl Scout or Girl Scout, and they like left me a little teaser or something like that. I'm not going to buy from them, but like I don't consider it rude that they left it. But I would have considered it rude if during dinner they knock on my door and keep knocking because they can see me in the window until I come up and then ask me if I want to buy cookies when I'm like obviously not ready to buy cookies right now. You know what I'm saying? You find 5 or 6 different areas of pain. Like for example, when your team doesn't have time to do research, you target poorly. When you target poorly, your messaging doesn't have the right kind of solution problem synergy, or it doesn't align. When that doesn't align, then you don't get the right type of engagement that you want. Then therefore you turn up the volume, and then you end up with a blacklisted, and an email is no longer a viable channel for you. That's a pain chain. Rather than putting all that in one email, each one is a little lesson where you can teach somebody. Each one can have a little bit of content. And so the first one would be like, why don't reps have time to research? Well, I don't know if you know this or not, but like the average reply rate's 1%. Buyers demand that you know more now because they know more about you before they talked. And therefore, you must spend time researching. But the average rep has 25 deals that spends an hour a week. They don't have enough time to do research, right? Like, here's a little time study that we did to help you understand why your reps might be struggling with time, and maybe some ways that you can clear it up on your own if you have some extra stuff in there to clean up on your own. Then my next email or phone call or whatever is going to be about, all right, hey, if you saw that we didn't have research, I'm wondering if you're wondering what that means. Well, it means your targeting is going to be bad because they're not going to understand. They're going to just pick the logos that they are familiar with or whatever common pitfalls that reps fall into. So that's how I do it, is I create this pain chain that allows me to educate them on a narrative that all connects together, that shows multiple angles of value that I can create, and is helping them, make them aware of why they might have a problem that they're unaware of.
Have you tested, let's assume that you have 2 prospects of the same caliber of ICP. One gets traditional prospecting type emails where you're just hammering them with meetings. The other gets this nice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pain chain. Do you have a sense of how much better the storytelling pain chain converts versus a traditional problem-based outbound sequence?
Some of the initial evidence we're seeing is 8x difference, because don't forget what we're doing is we're not fishing for replies in meetings in a pain chain. We're looking for, can we get them to do something to get value that indicates that they're more mature or they're progressing in their buyer's journey? Once they download the first thing, then we move them to aware. Now we know they're aware. Now let's create content that says, I might want to consider this, like a buyer's guide or feature parity matrix or whatever, right? Now they're considering. And then that's when we hit them for the meeting. We might not get a huge reply rate or whatever for that early pain chain education, but what we're doing, though, is we're now moving those people getting signals and moving them into a direct signal. So when we're asking for the meeting, we're getting it a lot more frequently than when we're sending it just blasting out to everybody. And we lost over the last 2 decades our rigor of testing. And so that's what we're trying to bring people back to, is in today's thing where we can send any idea anytime we want to, mass blast everybody, and there's so much noise. Why don't we slow down and first of all assess where they're at? Once we assess where they're at, then we can take the appropriate action to start moving them further down their buyer's journey. And I think that that's a step that most people are forgetting, but that is buried in our sales roots. We just have to dig it back out.
I mean, I think with today's tech stack, if you're a sales leader or rep listening, you can build this yourself. So step 1 is I'm going to define who has the most problems for the most value. That's step 1, right?
Yep.
Step 2, I probably have a couple of basic sequences for those personas or those types of problems that are focused on unaware messaging. So I have my 5-step unaware pain chain, where I'm just like 5 emails that are citing problem after problem after problem and just educating them on that problem and serving up content. And within each of those emails, I can have a data report or an insight or something that they can click on, and I can usually track clicks. And then if I'm doing this poor man style, hammer and nail in prospecting, what I'm doing is every single day when I open up my prospecting tasks, I'm starting with anyone who's opened an email more than 3 times or has clicked on one of the links in the email. And when that happens, I have a decision where I can either choose to make a cold call, I can choose to drop that sequence and put them into an aware sequence, and I can do some of this stuff manually, or I can send a one-off message outside of the traditional sequence. But you can do that. Essentially what you're doing is you're educating them on the problem until they click something or they open something a couple of times, and that's when you're going in for the kill, aka you're asking for the meeting.
When I say, listen, a sales rep has to create their own demand, everybody's like, no, that's marketing's job. It's sales' job to fill the demand. Well, actually, like to me, like that's one of those, well, it's not my problem, but guess what? I have to deal with it if it is a problem. And I don't know about you, but like I'm the type of person where like if I'm going to have to deal with a problem, I want control over being able to fix it. I was lucky enough to start my sales career where I was the SDR, the AE, the onboarder, the CSM, the support person, the logistics, the whatever. I was everybody. I renewed them every step of the thing I did. And so that's just kind of burned into my sales DNA. Like right now I have, probably 15 or 20 accounts that I'm re-engaging that we've talked to in the past. And this is kind of how I do it. This is the steps that I do it. And I could hire a marketing person to do that for me because it's not my job as a salesperson. But you know what? Like, I think I do it better than marketing does because I've talked to them. I've had the relationship. I know what to say. You know what I mean? And that would all get lost if somebody else kind of took over at that one point, or I wouldn't trust that stuff wouldn't get dropped.
Mark, we talked about a lot of good habits that teams can do around outbounding today. But to wrap this thing up, what is the biggest outbound sin that you can commit in 2025 that every sales leader and sales team should break?
When your email is more than half about what you do, you are lost. Because that means people are going to ignore. So, the number one rule of email is be concise. There's no bigger predictor of email success than be concise. And if you take that concise message and spend more than half of it talking about what you do, your customers, what logos you work with, what value you create, you're going to get turned off. The email needs to be about solve this problem you have, or you have this problem. This is why this problem might exist. Here are things that you might do to fix it. And then here's how we can help you do that. In that equation, that's 25% about you and 75% about them and education. And I think that those are the right ratios.
Mark, amazing show. Everyone hang up for a 60-second recap coming up soon. Alrighty, Mark, it's time for a 2x2 recap from this episode with you. What do you have for your 2?
Number 1, please send checks or money order to Mark Kosoglow.
Venmo. He's a Venmo.
Yeah, Venmo. That's good. Thank you. I think number 1 is if you are defining your ICP solely by firmographic and technographic data, you are hoping to find good customers rather than doing the work it takes to know this should be my customer and I need to go find them. My one boss, Matt Millen, always used to say, we got insulin, they got diabetes. What would prevent us from saving their life? Nothing. That's how you need to think about the prospects that absolutely must have you to fix their problems. And then number 2 is respect that buyer's journey. If you don't know where your account is or the people are in their buyer's journey with your product and you ask for a meeting, there is a 75% likelihood that they are not in a place where they are ready to book a meeting. And so asking for one is actually unhelpful. What we need to do is we need to start out with an assumption of where we think people are, then make sure that we're writing messaging and giving CTAs that give us insights into where they actually are. And then we can start to deal with them once we figure that out.
Number 3, the pain chain. Instead of doing the meeting chain, build up a story over 3, 4, 5 different messages where you're educating them on a problem and you're feeding them content to get them to engage. That brings them from unaware to aware. And then lastly, number 4, as part of your pain chain, try to think of some sort of offer or something that you can give them of value that isn't just a meeting. A couple of examples we discussed is number 1, if someone's trying to sell me SEO stuff, give me the 17 keywords that I missed on my site. Or with the organic skincare consultant, show them the 10 things that are out of compliance to make them aware of the problem so they can go fix the problem and then they can come back to you to fix it even more. So Mark, at this point of the show, I usually tell people how they can help us out. There are 2 ways that I think you could actually help Mark out if you found this helpful. Number 1, you can go to Operator AI, and he's basically building something to solve and build this entire system for your team. So if you don't want to do like the poor man's method of doing the sequence and looking at the clicks and the views and all that stuff, and you're interested in what we talked about, you can literally go check this out. But one of the things that we do on the show is we make sure that we give you the advice for free so you can do it no matter what tool you're using. And then, of course, there are some awesome tools like Operator out there that will help you do this thing the easier way. That's number one. And then number two, we haven't asked for this in a while. Go connect with Mark on LinkedIn. If you haven't seen some of his content, it is truly the best in the game. It is some of the best leadership content you will see, full stop, in the game. So we'll put a link to his LinkedIn in the show notes. If you're not connected with him already, what are you doing? Go do it and send him a message and let him know what you thought of this episode. All right, folks, peace out.